Hi everyone, it's the Photo Techie here. I hope you're all doing well. In today's video, I'm comparing the PDP Rematch against the Turtlebeach Recon. Two controllers which I believe should be on your shortlist if you are in the market for an entry-level Xbox controller with two programmable back buttons. So without any further ado, let's get started. The Rematch costs £29.99 here in UK and $37.95 USD in America. Comes with a rubber USB-C 8-foot long cable. There's a handy quick start guide in the box to let you know how to use the multifunction button on the controller. Turtlebeach Recon costs £49.99 here in UK and $57.95 USD in America. Comes with a 10-foot long braided USB-C cable and a very nicely printed quick start guide showing you all the features and different modes of the controller. So let's quickly take a look at this multifunction button on the PDP Rematch. You basically use it to control your headset volume. You press and hold, press up and down on the D-pad to change the global volume of your headset that's connected to the controller. You press and hold, press right and left for the chat and the game audio mix. To program the back buttons is very easy. You press and hold this button, press the back button, the LED light will start flashing. Now press the face button you want the back button to be programmed to, and you just repeat that for the other button. There are no profiles on the fly, so anytime if you want to change what the back buttons do, you have to do the process again. One thing that's a little bit different on the Rematch is if you go into your Xbox audio settings, you're not going to be able to change any of those, so you do have to use this multifunction button. Unfortunately, the mic monitoring level is grayed out as well. To change the level of the mic monitoring for the headset that's connected here, you'd have to go into the PDP's app, which I have open there, and in there you have the audio configuration. This is where you have to come in and change your mic monitoring at the bottom there. So anytime you want to change what the mic monitoring level or whatever, you have to come into the PDP app, and there are no onboard controls, but everything else works here perfectly. Increasing the volume, decreasing the game chat and the game audio mix works absolutely fine. To mute the mic, basically at the moment is muted because the LED light is on. If you double press it, now the mic is not muted. You press it, now the mic is mute. Simple controls. So let's talk about the module here on the Recon, how to control all the features. We have dedicated buttons for your global volume, the headset that's connected to the controller. Then we have the button for your chat, how much of the chat you want to come in, plus and minus for that. And we have the dedicated button for your mic. You can mute it and unmute it. Once it's unmuted, it's not showing an LED light. You press it, red means muted. We have this superhuman hearing. That's a Turtlebeach sort of signature sound. They say gives you a bit of an edge in your gaming. And then we have this mode button. With the mode button, you can select. So the first icon, this headset, is basically mic monitoring. So once I'm here, once that's lit, if I change the select settings, it goes into 4 different levels of mic monitoring. And then nothing lit up, that means nothing is happening there, basically no mic monitoring. Press again, we come into the EQ. We have 4 different EQs. Now Turtlebeach has a very handy guide that tells you what these things actually do, and that's basically in your instructions manual, so keep a hold of this. But yeah, you have the first one is the signature sound, the second one is I think is treble boost and bass boost something, but you have 4 of these, and after that we come into basically the controller LED. That's the back buttons profile, so you can actually have 4 different profiles of what the back buttons actually do. Now once you're in a profile, to program the back buttons, what they're doing, you have to basically hold this select button and it will start flashing. Now the whole lights are flashing. You press the back button, it will start indicating which one you press. Now press the face button you want to program to, and there you go, it will go back. Now it's doing again, so press the other one, it will show which one it is, and then press whatever face button. To come out of it, just press and hold the select, and that's it. So you've programmed the first profile to have A on the right hand side and B on the left hand side. If you wanted different things, you can just do that, and whilst you're playing, make sure that you are in the mode is in the back buttons, and then just change on the fly. You have 4 different sort of profiles. The last thing is this Pro Aim. If you engage that, I think pressing and holding the left back button, your sensitivity of the right sticks lowers, and then you have 4 different levels of how much lower you want it. So those are the controls. The good thing here on the Turtlebeach is whatever you do on the controller is actually done in your Xbox settings. So if I change the game chat, it's actually changing what's happening on the Xbox settings. If I change the volume, it's actually changing the volume in my Xbox settings. Muting, unmuting the mic is done there. Mic monitoring, same thing. If I go into mic monitoring and I change it, it doesn't show live there, but I'm gone into, let's say, level 2. If I come back, go into there, my monitoring is in the middle there. So this is really good and handy for the mic monitoring, at least, that it works. For the PDP Rematch, like I showed, you have to go into the PDP's app. Talking about the ergonomics, the PDP Rematch weighs 198 grams, which is a lot lighter than the standard series controller, which weighs 240 grams without batteries. The grips are a little bit chunkier here, and the trigger design a bit different, so it does make it feel a little bit different, but it's not a big departure from the standard controller. We do have a very fine texture on the grips at the back and a little bit on the triggers. Initially, I thought this is not going to help with the grip, but I have to say, in longer gaming sessions, when your hands are sort of warming up, it does help with the grip. The Recon weighs 228 grams, still lighter than the standard series controller, but heavier than the PDP Rematch. The grips have these rubber inserts, and the way the chunkier grips and the angles and the slope that they've used feels really nice in your hand. The trigger's designed a little bit differently. This sloping sides and a bit wide feels very, very nice in your hand. Talking about the D-pad and the face buttons, the D-pad is a very soft press here on the PDP Rematch, and the face buttons are a little bit smaller, feel a bit more crammed together, but they work perfectly. The other face buttons are in your standard position, so reaching them was not a problem at all. The D-pad on the Recon is still your standard type D-pad. It's not tactical, but it does require a bit more force to register the input. Feels a lot more substantial, I would say. The buttons, the face button feels you know, spread apart a little bit more than the Rematch. Works perfectly fine. These three, you know, the share, start and select buttons, they're a bit more closer to the right stick here, so at times I have felt, you know, go in there that I've moved the stick. I have to learn to use that one, but all in all, they function properly. Talking about the bumpers and the triggers, they are, you know, your standard style bumpers, not tactical here. The only thing on the PDP is you can't actuate them from in there, so you have to be a little bit out to be able to press them. They don't press because of the mechanism what they've used. You have to be a little bit out. It's still a very good press once you get used to it, not that bad. The trigger design is a little bit different here. They're very flat, not much, you know, sloping or dip on the sides. So using it does feel like the travel is more than basically it is. So for racing games could be a very good thing, but for shooting games I did find I wish there was trigger stops. Like badly wish there were trigger stops on this one. Still function absolutely perfectly, and once you get used to them, you know, they are absolutely fine. The bumpers and triggers on the Turtlebeach Recon, the bumpers are very small and a very, very soft press, where the PDP Rematch feels a little bit more tactile, but they are in an all right place. You can, you know, use them. I've never had any problems once you get used to it. It's just the feeling of these bumpers very different. The triggers, however, I do like them because they are sort of like this sloping sides of the triggers and this sharp edge there. So my fingers sort of like naturally rest. And for shooting games, pressing it quickly. I wish this also had trigger stops, but I can live with these triggers, you know, without the trigger stops. Yeah, the feeling for like shooting games is amazing. Let's talk about the back buttons. The Rematch has two, and they're quite large surface and can be actuated from anywhere, which I really like because I personally have to use the tip of my middle finger to actuate them. I don't like using that inside part, so it's really good. You do have to move your middle finger a little bit because it naturally rests a little bit down for me, but I have to say the overall design is very nice. It does feel a little bit flimsy and sort of like, you know, cheap, because I believe this is like a plastic on the top and there is a prong inside that's sort of pressing the actual button. But I've used this controller a lot, and I do use the back buttons a lot, and it is still fine for the time I've had it. So yeah, I do like the back button design here. So Recon also has two back buttons. They are very well, nicely placed. They're a little bit smaller in size overall compared to the Rematch, but the way your finger lands with these grips, it's very comfortable feel. You do have to press on the sides. The middle one is a bit more harder press here, so you do have to like use this side of the button, but they work perfectly. Whilst using, I do have to use my middle finger, like I have to move it a little bit, but I never felt that I never had any accidental presses. It does take a little bit of force. Overall, a very, very good design. Talking about the thumbsticks, I have to say the PDP have used, the material they've used here on the thumbsticks a bit more like sort of like a softer feeling silicone type material here. I do like it. If you're not going to use anything on top of these, then this is, I have to say, a bit better than the Recon. Recon is a very hard plastic feeling one, but the thing here is PDP Rematch has no anti-friction rings. I personally like that because if you want to use any precision rings by Turtlebeach or any other brand, that really helps. The one downside on the Rematch is your Xbox control freaks sort of leave marks. So I don't know if the camera can pick this up, but they do fit. But what I ended up doing was using the PS5 ones, or PS4, PS5 ones. They are a little bit loose, so they hang around, but they will stick there. And it never moved whilst gaming or anything, but it's like you're buying an Xbox controller. If you do use control freaks, most likely you have the Xbox brand ones. But I mean, you can still use the Xbox brand one, but this one worked better for me. The Recon, on the other hand, they're very much like standard Xbox style. It's just the feeling is a bit more, because it's a hard plastic kind of feeling, it's a little bit slipperier. The PDP Rematch feels a bit more grippy. But any Xbox brand, for any Xbox normal controller, control freaks, they work perfectly here. And this has very thin anti-friction rings, but for some reason I just don't like using precision ring here. It's too tight. Even the softer one restricts your movement a lot. So green is the softest that I use on the Rematch. But yeah, that's, without it, just like the mid-rise, I really loved it. With the Rematch, I prefer the high-rise and a precision ring. Now, something is going on with the Rematch which is a little bit different. They have, PDP has built-in dead zones. So basically you have to make sure your in-game dead zones are set to 0, because if you have any dead zones in the in-game, you will have the built-in dead zone, then the in-game setting as well. Now, for some that might be a bit of a letdown, but I actually much prefer the aiming on the Rematch. I don't know what PDP is doing, if they have a custom curve or something, but it feels so precise, feels so good. Just putting the dead zones to 0 and just let I don't know what the built-in dead zones are, if they're like 10% or 5% or whatever, but it feels very nice. Now, I've had Recon for a long time, and I played a lot on it, and my dead zones, I have to keep it to like 0.06 in Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2, which I believe equates to like 6%, like in the middle, and then after that there is no drift on my right stick. Now, every controller I have, basically the default settings, if you don't touch the dead zone in the game, they're like 10%, like 0.10. So anything under that, it's amazing. So having like 6%, and the amount of time I've spent on this controller, and it's at 6%, it's quite amazing actually. But it's just like, this feels very much closer to the standard controller to me, the response curve, when I do the dead zones. The PDP aiming is a little bit, now I don't know if it's just the physical design or if it's the software, but if I have to say, like for aiming, I really, really do like what PDP is doing with their built-in dead zones. Personally, I playing Call of Duty, I much prefer the aiming and the sticks on the PDP Rematch than the Turtlebeach Recon. But it's like, just getting used to it. If you get used to the Recon, it's not going to be a big thing. It's, with anything else we adapt. But if I had to pick one for aiming, that'd be the PDP Rematch. So let's talk value, guys. Like I mentioned, I do prefer the triggers and bumpers to an extent on Turtlebeach. The on-hand controls for your mic monitoring and the dedicated volume and chat dials are really good. You have 4 different profiles for your back buttons. If you're playing a game where you need to change what the back buttons do on the fly, that's a lot quicker than PDP Rematch. PDP Rematch, on the other hand, does have all the controls on your hand. It has a multifunction button. You can control the headset volume and the game chat mix. It's just you have to use the D-pad in conjunction with that button. The downside on the PDP is you don't have the mic monitoring on hand. And the Xbox settings are grayed out as well, so you have to go into the PDP Rematch app to basically adjust that. But then it does have that app to do diagnostics and stuff, so that's a positive there. But it really comes down to aiming for me, and the thumbsticks, and you know how they are performing. I have to say, for that reason, I do lean more towards PDP Rematch, because I personally find those built-in dead zones and the response curve slightly better than the Turtlebeach Recon. I've had to change the dead zone settings on the Recon. Initially it was a bit lower, it was like 4%, now it's at like 6%, in Call of Duty like 0.06, but that's just like with any other controller. The PDP Rematch, on the other hand, is exactly like how it was. I don't know what kind of dead zones they have, if they have 10% or 5%, but it doesn't hinder my performance, and I do like using it. So the type of games I'm playing, aiming is very important. So I can deal with the, you know, lighter controller, a bit cheaper feeling, you can say, because yeah, the Recon does feel a lot more substantial in hand with the rubber inserts, and I think the plastic is a bit more denser as well used on the Recon. PDP does feel a bit cheaper, but the performance, that's what that matters if you're playing competitively. For that reason, I have to say I do like the Rematch. But either of these, you know, if you go with any of these, like it's not a bad deal. So if you want to save some money, or you don't have the funds to get the Recon, you are not going to be losing much on the Rematch. On the other hand, if you do a lot of different type of games and triggers are important to you, and the feel of the controller, and you feel like, you know, you want something that feels good in your hand, then yeah, Turtlebeach Recon is a really good option. Also, if you're communicating a lot, you know, mic monitoring and all that, that's you know, available to you very quickly. So yeah, both are a very good deal, and I hope, you know, I was able to give you some good information in this video. If I left anything out, if you want to know anything else, please do leave a comment below. I do my best to reply to every comment I get. And yeah, going forward, I do have, you know, videos coming on the Elite Series 2 and the Razor Wolverine V2 Chroma as well. Hopefully I will see you in my next videos. Thanks.